Welcome to reading and studying the Book of Mormon with me. The Book of Mormon is a wonderful scripture that us, as members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, study and love next to and alongside with the Bible. It affirms Jesus Christ's role and mission as Savior and Redeemer. We love Jesus Christ and we love this book because it truly testifies of Him. So in today's reading, Mosiah Chapter 7, let's see what we can find out more about Jesus Christ, how we can worship or emulate Him, or themes that might be related to Jesus Christ. Now, Mosiah 7 picks up in this story we've been reading about the people of King Benjamin. A few chapters ago, King Benjamin was an aging king who left his blessing on his people and then set Mosiah, his son, to be the next king. So the first few years of Mosiah's reign was peaceful, and then they decide to send out a what would it be called? A dispatch of people to go look for some of their brethren who had wandered off into the wilderness years ago in search of some other of their brethren who had left. So we get to find out more about these people that they discover, hear more of what's happened to them, and get quite a grand adventure in this chapter. Let's go ahead and get started. It's a pretty long one. Okay, so the summary here is that Ammon finds the land of Nephi. Ammon is one of the explorers that's going to get sent out, where Limhi is king. Limhi's people are in bondage to the Lamanites. Limhi's people are the people that had left exploring, looking for their land, and when they are found by Ammon, it is found that they are in bondage to the Lamanites, which the Lamanites are usually at odds with the Nephites, and right now they are very much at odds with the Nephites because they had actually taken the people of Limhi, who are a subset of the people of Nephi, into bondage. So Limhi recounts their history. When they find Limhi, he tells them what's been up with them, and then he tells that a prophet Abinadi had testified of Christ and is the God and Father of all things, and those who sow filthiness reap the whirlwind, and those who put their trust in the Lord will be delivered. So Limhi is going to bring us up to speed on the prophecies of Abinadi, who was a prophet who had come before him. All right, so it's kind of quite the storyline in this chapter. Let's go ahead and dive in with verse 1. Now it came to pass that after the king Mosiah had had continual peace for the space of 3 years, he was desirous to know concerning the people who went up to dwell in the land of Nephi, or in the city of Nephi. For his people had heard nothing from them from the time they had left Zarahemla. Therefore they wearied him with their teasings. So teasings means probably nagging or talking to him, questioning him about it. So Mosiah the king has these people that are saying, please, please find out what happened to our brethren that left to go reclaim the land of Nephi, or to go inhabit that land. Find out what happened to them. We haven't heard anything. You know, there are friends, there are family members, whatever. We would love to find out what happened. So Mosiah decides to go ahead and send out an explorer. Okay, verse 2, it came to pass that King Mosiah granted that 16 of their strong men might go up to the land of Nephi to inquire concerning of their brethren. So these 16 men were probably the Bear Grylls types of guys that were good explorers, hunters, survivors out there in the wilderness, because they were going to need to be. They didn't know exactly, what conditions they were going to be walking into, and there definitely wasn't a maverick on every street corner on the way to the land of Nephi. It was probably pretty barren. So these 16 men were sent out to go look for the people. Verse 3, it came to pass that on the morrow they started to go up, having with them one Ammon, he being a strong and mighty man, and a descendant of Zarahemla, and he was also their leader. So I have to comment here real quick. In like 20-ish plus chapters, we meet another character named Ammon, and there's quite a few chapters about him. He's a famous missionary, and he's legendary. Like, he does some incredible things, but this is a different Ammon. So if you hang with me and you find out about another guy named Ammon mentioned later, totally different guy. So verse 4, and now they knew not the course they should travel in the wilderness to go up to the land of Nephi. Therefore they wandered many days in the wilderness, even 40 days did they wander. All right, so they don't have like a well-made map. Again, there is not a maverick on every corner, so they are probably struggling. And when they had wandered 40 days, they came to a hill, which is north of the land Shilom, and there they pitched their tents. And Ammon took 3 of his brethren, and their names were Amaleki, Helam, and Hem, and they went down into the land of Nephi. And behold, they met the people in the land of Nephi and in the land of Shilom, and they were surrounded by the king's guard and were taken and were bound and were committed to prison. All right, so after 40 days of wandering around, they see this land, a peopled, inhabited place, and they take a little contingent of individuals and go down to check it out, and they're immediately captured by the king's guard and escorted into prison. Verse 8, it came to pass when they had been in prison for 2 days, they were again brought before the king, and their bands were loosed. And they stood before the king and were permitted, or rather commanded, that they should answer the questions which he should ask them. And he said unto them, Behold, I am Limhi, the son of Noah, who was the son of Zeniff, who came up out of the land of Zarahemla to inherit this land, which was the land of their fathers, who was made a king by the voice of the people. And now I desire to know the cause whereby you were so bold as to come near the walls of the city, when I myself was with my guards without the gate. And now for this cause have I suffered that you should be preserved, that I might inquire of you, or else I should have caused that my guards should have put you to death. You are permitted to speak. All right, so Limhi, the king of this town, city, whatever, land that these explorers just came into contact with, he said, the only reason I didn't kill you is because I want to know why you were so brave or bold or foolish as to venture near my community here. And now when Ammon saw that he was permitted to speak, he went forth and bowed himself before the king. And rising again, he said, O king, I am very thankful before God this day that I am yet alive and am permitted to speak, and I will endeavor to speak with boldness. For I am assured that if you had known me, you would not have suffered that I should have worn these bands. For I am Ammon, and am a descendant of Zarahemla, and have come up out of the land of Zarahemla to inquire concerning our brethren, who Zeniff brought up out of that land. And now it came to pass, after Limhi heard these words of Ammon, he was exceedingly glad, and said, Now I know of a surety that my brethren who were in the land of Zarahemla are yet alive. And now I will rejoice, and on the morrow I will cause that my people shall rejoice also. So when Ammon identifies himself, Limhi is excited because they are from the same place, from Zarahemla. But apparently Limhi wasn't able to tell that just by looking at Ammon, because he just looked like a regular guy who'd been in this forest for 40 days and probably looked pretty scruffy and probably had no idea who he was. But anyway, been a long time since, they'd lived in the same place anyway, so he just had no idea who he was. And clearly these were hard times. If, somebody wanders near your community and they're immediately suspect and, potentially put to death just because, how dare you come near us? Hard times, I would say. Warlike times. Verse 15, for behold, we are in bondage. Okay, so Limhi is now talking to Ammon. Ammon is the explorer. Limhi's the king. Limhi's like, oh, I'm so glad that it's you, because, for behold, we are in bondage to the Lamanites, and are taxed with a tax which is grievous to be borne. And now, behold, our brethren will deliver us out of bondage, or out of the hands of the Lamanites, and we will be their slaves. For it is better to be slaves to the Nephites than to pay tribute to the king of the Lamanites. Now, this is one of my favorite verses. I think it's kind of cute and kind of funny that Limhi is immediately assuming that Ammon and his people are going to come deliver him. He said, oh, good, I'm so glad that, you're our brethren and we're from the same, from the land of Zarahemla, because I am confident that you're going to come deliver us from the Lamanites, and then we'll be your servants. He doesn't ask them, he just tells them this is how it's going to be. So I guess he, is a confident man. Okay, verse 16. Now, and I'm sure Ammon was like, wait, what? We were just coming to check and see where you lived. We weren't looking to raise an army. Okay, things are going from 0 to 60 pretty quick here. Verse 16, and now King Limhi commanded his guards that they should no more bind Ammon nor his brethren, but cause that they should go to the hill which was north of Shilom, and bring their brethren into the city, that thereby they may eat and drink and rest themselves from the labors of their journey. For they had suffered many things. They had suffered hunger, thirst, and fatigue, which I can only imagine 40 plus days in the wilderness will do that to anybody. I can guess. All right. Verse 17, and now it came to pass that on the morrow that King Limhi sent a proclamation among all his people that they might gather themselves together to the temple to hear the words which he should speak unto them. So Limhi is excited. These explorers are hopefully going to come save him. He's making lots of assumptions, but that's what he's holding out for. So he's gathering his people to tell them the good news. Verse 18, it came to pass that when they had gathered themselves together, that he spake unto them this wise, saying, O ye my people, lift up your heads and be comforted. For behold, the time is at hand, or is not far distant, when we shall no longer be in subjection to our enemies. Notwithstanding our many struggles, which have been in vain, yet I trust there remaineth an effectual struggle to be made. Therefore lift up your heads and rejoice, and put your trust in God, in that God who was the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, and also the God who has brought the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt, and caused that they should walk through the Red Sea on dry ground, and fed them with manna, that they might not perish in the wilderness. And many more things did he do for them. And again, that same God, which has brought our fathers out of the land of Jerusalem, and has kept and preserved his people even until now. And behold, it is because of our iniquities and abominations that he has brought us into bondage. All right, we'll pause there for just a second. So the king is reminding them that they are being helped because of God. And he's reminding them that their God is the same God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the one who'd watched over Moses and delivered him. He's doing this to really remind the people of their faith. And it's so important that we have stories to help remind us of our faith. And that is why we need the scriptures so much, is to remember exactly what God and Jesus Christ have done for us. If we can remember those stories, and then also the stories of how specifically he's touched our lives, that's why journals can be helpful, or just being very clear to remember those experiences you've had that have brought you to Christ. Then you can have faith that if he's delivered you in the past, he can deliver you again. And of course, he says here that part of the reason that they had been in bondage was because of their iniquities and their abominations. So he's really acknowledging that when God watches over you, helps you, protects you, gives you more strength and power, obviously, when you are obeying his commandments. But when you turn your back on him, he does not preserve you. And so he's acknowledging that is why they came into bondage. And ye are all, verse 21, ye are all witnesses this day that Zeniff, who was made king over this people, he being overzealous to inherit the land of his fathers, therefore being deceived by cunning and craftiness of King Limhi, who having entered into a treaty with King Zeniff, and having yielded up his lands, and yielded up into his hands the possession of a part of the land, and even the city of Lehi Nephi, and the city of Shilom, and the land round about. And all this he did for the sole purpose of bringing this people into subjection or into bondage. And because we are at this time, we do pay tribute to the king of the Lamanites, to the amount of 1/2 of our corn and our barley, and even all our grain of every kind, and 1/2 of the increase of our flocks and our herds, and even 1/2 of all we have to possess the king of the Lamanites doth exact on us or our lives. And now is this not grievous to be borne? And is not this our affliction great? Now behold, we have great reason to mourn. We'll just take a break there. So I love how he points out in verse 21 that Zeniff was overzealous to inherit the land of his fathers. And so he entered into this treaty with the king of the Lamanites, King Zeniff, and then they ended up being taxed so greatly that it was half of everything that they owned. And that level of taxation is horrible, right? We know that, how hard it is to provide for yourself when half of everything you taken is taken away. So I don't know that they were given a whole lot of benefit for that. At least in a lot of our taxation systems, we're given quite a few benefits that help us with transportation and education and protection. I don't know that they were getting much benefit. They were getting just having to give half of what they made. So they were having to work really hard just to survive. But again, I really like how he pointed out that it was because he got kind of blinded by excitement that he was willing to maybe be overly positive about what the prospects were of entering into this so-called treaty with the king of the Lamanites. And I love how the scriptures point out true, sometimes even like psychological principles. We can get so excited about something that we want it so bad that sometimes we're irrational. And, you can fill in the blanks with any situation in your own life where maybe you've been overly positive because you want something so bad. And I think that's why temperance is such an important quality of Jesus Christ. He was temperate and calm and meek and measured in what he did, so he didn't overstep. He didn't overclaim. He didn't overextend. Whenever he wrote a check, he was able to cash it, so to speak. So that is a good lesson for us, to be temperate and to count the cost of what kinds of things we enter into, so that we don't end up getting ourselves in the same kind of trouble that he got himself into, he and his people. Verse 24, yea, I say unto you, great are the reasons which we have to mourn. For behold, how many of our brethren have been slain, and their blood has been spilt in vain, all because of our iniquity. For if this people had not fallen into transgression, the Lord would not have suffered that this great evil should come upon them. But behold, they would not hearken unto his words. But there arose contentions among them, even so much they did shed blood among themselves. So he's again going on a flashback about how things were when they first became under the rule of the Lamanites. They were so excited that we're going to get our land, that they ended up falling into the trap of the Lamanites. But not only that, there was tremendous contention. They were even killing each other. So when you have that level of contention, you cannot think clearly. You cannot hear the Holy Ghost. You cannot try to emulate Christ when contention has taken a hold. And I think that's why we are continually being warned by our prophet nowadays to root out contention. And the 12 apostles are giving those same messages. Root out contention. Be peaceable. We do not want these kinds of things on our hands. Verse 26, and a prophet of the Lord have they slain, yea, a chosen man of God, who told them of their wickedness and abominations, and prophesied of many things which are to come, yea, even the coming of Christ. Because he said unto them that Christ was the God, the Father of all things, and said that he should take upon him the image of man, and it should be the image after which man was created in the beginning. Or in other words, he said that man was created after the image of God, and that God should come down among the children of men, and take upon him flesh and blood, and go forth upon the face of the earth. And now because he said this, they did put him to death, and many more things did they do, which brought down the wrath of God upon them. Therefore we wondered that who wondereth that they are in bondage, and that they are smitten with sore afflictions. So we're going to hear more about this story about Abinadi, this great prophet. We get to hear a lot about his prophecies and the entire narrative of what happened with him later in this book. And it's wonderful. But he's talking about how the people had put to death this great prophet. And what was his great sin? Well, it was testifying of Jesus Christ. That Jesus Christ would come down, and that he would come among the children of men and be cloaked in flesh and blood and go upon the face of the earth. So he was killed for testifying of Christ. And of course, we know in our day that Christ is divisive, in that you can either love him and worship him, or, you can turn against him. But he stands for something. He's not a lukewarm figure. He stands for peace. He stands for strength and for worship and for faith. And either you're with him or you're against him. But this particular community were so angry at Abinadi's prophecies of Christ, because it convicted them. It was in testifying of Christ, it's testifying against wickedness, and they didn't want that. They wanted to do what they were wanting. And again, we will hear more of that story of Abinadi later, and how he testified of Christ and was killed for it. He was martyred. Verse 29, for behold, the Lord has saith, I will not succor my people in the day of their transgression, but I will hedge up their ways, that they prosper not, and their doings shall be as a stumbling block before them. So that is something that I'm very aware of, is that as I follow Jesus Christ, as I worship God with all my heart, that whatever I do, whatever struggles I run into, it ends up working out for me in the long run. Not that everything's always perfect by any means, like struggles, everyone has them, right? But that they either end up being a stumbling block, as it says in verse 29, if you turn against God, your struggles will end up being a stumbling block. They will actually cause you to struggle to even progress. But if you follow Christ, all of your struggles will end up being stepping stones. You can take whatever difficulties you've been given, grow from them, and really improve and kind of like transcend over you with his grace. You can overcome. He says, fear not. He says to believe in him, and you can overcome all things. But if not, then what comes your way will be a stumbling block. So there are going to be struggles that come to us no matter what. But it's in our true, honest, fully hearted worship of Jesus Christ as we turn to him and have him help. We employ his grace. We take his grace to help us. Then we can overcome those difficulties and they can be stepping stones. But again, if not, stumbling blocks, right? Everyone's going to have trouble. So how's it going to end up for you? Verse 30, and again he saith, if my people shall sow filthiness, they shall reap the chaff thereof in the whirlwind, and the effect thereof is poison. So reaping chaff is, with wheat, you've got the wheat and then you've got the chaff that's left over. Wheat is nourishing. Chaff is absolutely worthless. Chaff in the whirlwind and the effect is poison. That sounds not good. And again he saith, if my people shall sow filthiness, they shall reap the east wind. And of course the east wind symbolizes destruction, which it says here, which bringeth immediate destruction. And now, behold, the promise of the Lord is fulfilled, and ye are smitten and afflicted. But if you will turn to the Lord with full purpose of heart, and put your trust in him, and serve him with all diligence of mind, if you do this, he will, according to his own will and pleasure, deliver you out of bondage. And that is the end. So this was Limhi's teachings to his people, really telling them that if they want God's help, they need to turn towards him. And now is the time to really turn. And I love this because it testifies that, God is always there seeking us out. We can at any point in time of our lives, if we've been brought into bondage, so to speak, if we have reaped the east wind, we're having destruction in our lives, it's not too late. We can turn to Christ and he will deliver us. It is as soon as we turn to him, then he starts to help us, strengthen us, and deliver us. Okay, so as far as things that we can take into our own lives, I think that we can just ask ourselves, are we using the difficulties that come our way as stepping stones to better become like Christ, to ask for his help, to reach for his hand so he can help us transcend those difficulties, whether it's through character development, greater trust and faith in him, or through actually getting inspiration of what to try that's going to help us pull out of the mud? Or are we going to just rely on ourselves? And ultimately, what's going to happen will be stumbling blocks, not stepping stones, especially if we're proud, if we have pride. And all of us do. It is a common human problem. So it's something we all have to work on. All right. I hope you have enjoyed this chapter. Feel free to leave in the comments if there's something that stood out to you, and I'll see you next time.